So moving from Magento 1 to Magento 2, Miguel, give us your 10,000, your 3,300 meter view of this.
This is not a migration by replatforming. That's something everybody needs to understand. There might be a bunch of stuff you can take away from your Magento 1 store, but that's mostly data, like customer data, order data, product data. But the rest, the customizations, the integrations you have, most of them will have to be recoded for Magento 2. It might be easier because both are PHP, but what I usually say is that the only thing Magento 1 and 2 share is the name. So it's kind of, I know there are a bunch of companies telling you, yeah, I can do this migration in 1 to 10 days. I don't think that's a great idea. And I do think programs like the Express builds you have with Wagento are great because it doesn't take a lot of time. It doesn't take like a ton of money, but you still get things done right by a really good agency, like a really good system integrator like Wagento, and you don't risk yourself by putting yourself out there and working with these really cheap companies doing stuff like really fast without really checking the quality of their code, the quality of like their builds. So I would say you need to treat this as a replatforming, but there are a couple of, like a handful of resources you still can use, like Nexcess, like Wagento. We still do Magento 2. Wagento also do Magento 2, but besides that, it's not like a really simple migration to a different Magento version. That's not the case. And I have seen companies promoting that, and I get really mad because that's just misleading, you know?
Yeah, I agree that I think the role of both Nexcess and Wagento is to make the migration as easy as possible for the merchant. So as you said, it is complicated, and as you dig into it, it's not extremely easy. But as we are going to go into our next slide, just having that communication channel and having your expectations, having those expectations come to the surface with your agency or with your hosting provider is the key to success. And as we talked about in taking action, that first part of that action is to create a plan for your migration. So starting with your data migration, there is a great data migration tool that Magento has created that we use. And if you're interested, I have a Adobe Summit presentation on that. And I also have 12 Magento U episodes on migrating from Magento 1 to Magento 2 that kind of walk you through the basics of that migration. And you can, I think during this migration process, this is the time that you can rethink and re-envision your store. We do have customers that are still coming to us that are on Magento 1 and their store is not responsive. So in this migration, that responsiveness is going to come with your Magento 2 store. And the reality of your situation is that your store, if it is 12 years old or 10 years old, you probably need a new look or at least a fresh update to your website. And in that update, you are going to have to redo your theme. When you move to Magento 2, you will have to redo your theme. This is the opportunity to redo those items that you need to do. And Magento 2 also gives you the ability to do progressive web apps. So you can choose to use the Magento theme or a Magento theme from a vendor, but you can also build a progressive web app or PWA that I know Nexcess supports as well. So there are many options available to you while you are migrating from Magento 1 to Magento 2. And I just want to reiterate, this is the time to think about and re-envision your store. And I would say even simplify your store as you move forward. And going back to that slide about technical debt, some of that technical debt could be the 30 or 40 modules that you've had installed over the last 10 years and you're only using 3 of them. And by the way, 2 of those modules are already covered in Magento 2. So this is a time to think about what you're doing. Miguel, what is, from a hosting side, how do you see the process happening?
We only get to see like the last part of the process. Like when everything's ready, people is gonna call me and be like, yeah, I want to move my site to Nexcess. So it's not like we get to see how people is actually coding this. We do get to work with some of our partners on that process, but it's mostly a black box for us. And the bad thing about that is when you come to Nexcess and you tell me, yeah, the site doesn't work here, I'm gonna be like, why didn't you try this before the day you were supposed to launch? Why didn't you try to develop your site on top of the servers you're going to be using for production? You know, so I would like to see more people working closely with hosting providers or like cloud providers, because it doesn't have to be like the last action you do. It has to be something you try before you go live. It has to be something you actually understand. And I'm going to say something really weird, because I don't really understand why people don't seem to get this. Most of the Magento cloud out there are managed hosting. So if you come to me and tell me I need sudo for this, I need elevated permission for that, that's going to be like, no. But then I'm going to tell you, why are you even buying our services? That's where I provide value, in managing your hosting, in managing your infrastructure. I'm managing that part, so you don't have to hire an extremely expensive team of system administrators like sysadmins, sysocs. That's where I provide value. So I would say I would like to see more and more companies working closely with cloud providers, because it's going to be easier for everybody. You know, it's going to be way easier for you to try your store before the day you have to go live, basically to avoid all kind of issues. So it's a really complicated process, because there's not a lot of like understanding, and I've seen companies doing a really bad job when it comes to like moving from Magento 1 to Magento 2, or like starting new Magento 2 projects. So it's a really complicated situation, if you ask me. And I would like to see that work, you know, but it's not really up to me. I'm just a little tiny part at the end of the build operation, and I don't like that. I don't like to be like the main guy there, where you ask me, hey, how is this supposed to work? How is Varnish integrating? How do you do PHP? How can we use Redis? That kind of stuff. So I would like to be a part of that process, but it's not that common in the agency world. So it's the way it is.